In the 12th and 13th century, the Gothic cathedrals arise. Between 1170 and 1270, the French built 80 cathedrals and nearly 500 churches of a cathedral class. These buildings are all similar. They are huge. They have towers. Naves and transepts are incredibly high. They have flying buttresses and stained glass windows. It must have cost a fortune to build them. Astronomical amounts of money must have been spent. And the work. Why were they built? What was the source of inspiration? The construction of cathedrals, that was not an isolated event. They expressed the sentiments of a time, and that time was dominated by military operations on an almost global scale. The Crusades. So the Crusades and the construction of the cathedrals, they were interwoven, they were connected. You can almost say that the Crusades and the construction of the cathedrals are like two sides of the same coin. Let me first tell you something about the Crusades. In 1095, the city of Constantinople is attacked by the Turks. King Alexius asked the Pope in Rome to send reinforcements. The Pope addresses the Council of Clermont, but he speaks to the world at large. He addresses a world in which a militant caste of warriors sets the tone. His words are unusual. War and bloodshed among Christians is a great evil. But the war against the Antichrist, the infidels, the Jews and the Muslims who occupy the grave of the Savior, that is something else. Such a war is a purification. It is a holy war. He proclaims a crusade and promises salvation for each and every participant. Something remarkable happens. The Pope's definition of a common enemy unites the divided warlords of Europe. By the thousands and thousands they line up for the crusade. Dieu le veut is their motto. It is God's will. They take action immediately. In Cologne, Worms and Speyer, Jews are driven out of their houses. Houses are burned. The inhabitants massacred. Dieu le veut. The trail of blood could be traced all the way across the European continent. In 1099, the city of Jerusalem is taken. The fanatism of the Crusaders is boundless. Atrocities surpass any description. Dieu le veut. A new kingdom, the kingdom of Jerusalem, is founded. For 40 years, the Muslim world lives in a state of a traumatic shock. But then a new leader steps forward, Zengi. And Zengi proclaims a jihad. When his successor Nuruddin appears in front of the gates of Damascus with his armies, the leaders in the West fear the loss of the new kingdom. The Pope proclaims a second crusade, which is led by the King of France. The King of England, Richard the Lion's Heart, leads the third crusade. The King of France, Louis IX, the later St. Louis, he's in charge of no less than 2 crusades. When you read about the time of the crusades, you discover something remarkable. It seems that nobody is worried about the casualties. Nobody seems to be disturbed about the cruelties. Nobody seems to regret the losses. Because the casualties, the cruelties are believed to be no more than the pains of a community in labor, pregnant of a beautiful new world. Because the birth of a new world and a new heaven has been prophesied by the book of Revelation. Practically on the last page of the Bible, there is the description of a vision. It is the vision of a new Jerusalem, a city of God, descending from heaven. So while the warriors, the crusaders, leave for the worldly Jerusalem, cleansing it from the infidels, the people staying back home start to rebuild their churches in the image of the new Jerusalem, as described by the book of Revelation. I saw the holy city and the new Jerusalem coming down from God out of heaven, as beautiful as a bride all dressed for her husband. Now how do you turn these words into stone? By location, by architecture. Built on elevated positions, erected in wide open landscapes. These cathedrals could be seen from a great distance as hovering above the earthly city. And the master builders did everything to hide the horizontal lines of the cathedral, emphasize the vertical lines. Let me give you some examples. The town of Chartres is surrounded by sheer endless fields of wheat. When you approach the city, you can see the cathedral from afar. In Chartres, the cathedral has been built on an elevated position. Do you recognize the image of a city of God coming down from heaven, hovering above the houses? Here we are in Angers. As you can see, the cathedral has also been built on an elevated position. When you approach the cathedral from the river, you are looking up at a structure that seems to transcend the earthly city. Look at the great cathedral of Laon. I hope you now recognize the apocalyptic vision which inspired its architecture. Finally, the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. During the Middle Ages, most people were living in very small and primitive dwellings. So when they looked at the formidable cathedral which arose in their midst, they must have shivered at the anticipation of the end of time. There's another line from the book of Revelation which is essential for the understanding of Gothic cathedrals. It had all the radiant glory of God and glittered like some precious jewel of crystal clear diamond. In our day and age, we're accustomed to huge buildings made entirely out of glass. In the Middle Ages, cathedrals were made with stone. Now, how do you construct a stone building that sparkles like a crystal clear diamond? The master builders of the cathedrals, they did something incredible. They dematerialized the walls. Let me show you how they created a structure of transparency. Look at the keystone above the high altar. That keystone is the center of a vault, which is supported by 4 huge pillars. The pillars, the vault and the keystone, they form a baldachin, a canopy above the altar. Keep looking up. What do you see? When you look from the main keystone to one of the rose windows, you will discover that the entire structure of the cathedral consists of a series of baldachins. A series of baldachins. 5 baldachins form the nave. 3 baldachins form the choir. 4 baldachins form the transept. Like a horseshoe, nave and transept are surrounded by a double row of baldachins. 64 in total. The chapels on the outside form another 37 baldachins. 113 baldachins form a unique structure of transparency. This incredible structure of transparency is separated from the outer world only on the outside, but not by a stone wall, of course, by glass. In this manner, the walls are dematerialized by the use of transparent tapestries of glass. In reds, yellows, blues, and purples, they sparkle like crystal clear diamonds, thus transforming the light of the earthly city into the light of the city of God. In the transparency of the glass, they all light up. The archfathers, the kings, the prophets, and the martyrs, whose total devotion and unconditional love paved the way to the birth of a new heaven and a new world. The vulnerability of the dematerialized walls of stained glass had to be compensated by the so-called flying buttresses. These forms of buttressing serve to transmit the lateral forces pushing the walls outwards down to the ground. In the Middle Ages, the Crusades coincide with the construction of the cathedrals. I'm convinced that the liberation of Jerusalem from the infidels was believed to contribute to the realization of the vision described in the book of Revelation. A new Jerusalem descending from heaven, and the vision of a city of God coming down from heaven and sparkling like a crystal clear diamond. That vision inspired the master builders, the sculptors, and the masters which created the stained glass windows. At a more intimate, personal level, they dedicated their work to the Queen of Heaven. Because you see, It is not until the time of the Crusades that the Virgin, the Mother of Christ, starts to overshadow the Trinity. That is why the overwhelming majority of the cathedrals is dedicated to her. She is the fleur de lis, the snow-white lily among the thistles. Dressed in the white linen of the righteous, she represents the community of saints, the Church. She is the patron saint of the new heaven and the new earth. She is the door to heaven, the star of the sea. She is Our Lady, Notre Dame.
More